This is Land of Havilah, Psalm 105. It's a psalm of wonder in how God established a covenant with Abraham, a covenant being a set of promises on God's part contingent on us fulfilling the terms of it. The covenant was in effect starting with Abraham. It continued to be in effect between God and Abraham's descendants, which is us. Jesus gave a definition of Abraham's descendants. It wasn't everyone physically descended from him. It was everyone who did the works of Abraham, John 8:39. Meaning everyone who places his faith in God and conducts his life accordingly is a child of Abraham. God made an outlandish statement to Abraham when Abraham was old and had no children. It looked like he never would have any children. God made the statement to him that his descendants would be for number as the sand of the sea and as the stars of the sky. It was impossible that he would have children because of Abraham's age and his wife's age, but to Abraham's credit, he believed God would give him a son. This psalm starts with that unlikely promise and continues to Isaac, who was the fulfillment of that son being on the way, and on to the next generation, which was Jacob, also called Israel. The three of them, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, are called the patriarchs. The story of the psalm continues from them to Jacob's son Joseph, to the multiplication of the Israelites in Egypt, to the 10 plagues, to God delivering all Israel from Egypt to the promised land. It all came to pass in fulfillment of the promise to Abraham that his descendants would be innumerable and would possess the land of Canaan. So now the saga of it in this psalm, told as a wonder so that God might be praised for speaking it in the beginning and bringing it to pass with miracle after miracle. Verse 1. Give thanks to Yahweh, call on his name, make his doings known among the peoples. Sing to him, sing praises to him. Tell of all his marvelous works. Glory in his holy name. Let the heart of those who seek Yahweh rejoice. Seek Yahweh and his strength. Seek his face forevermore. Remember his marvelous works that he has done, his wonders, and the judgments of his mouth, you offspring of Abraham, his servant, you children of Jacob, his chosen ones. He is Yahweh our God. His judgments are in all the earth. He has remembered his covenant forever, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations, the covenant which he made with Abraham, his oath to Isaac, and confirmed the same to Jacob for a statute, to Israel for an everlasting covenant. Comment verses 1 to 10 we just read are basically, listen up, Israel, praise God because you're the beneficiaries of a long heritage of what God has done for you. Here's what happened. God spoke to Abraham, and in the next generation to Isaac, and in the next generation to Jacob, giving them all the same promises that he would give them a multitude of descendants, that they would possess the land, and he would be their God forever. He spoke to them, verse 11, saying, To you I will give the land of Canaan, the lot of your inheritance, when they were but a few men in number, yes, very few, and foreigners in it. Comment, the patriarchs were foreigners in Canaan when God told them their descendants would possess it. Now, speaking of the days when the patriarchs sojourned in Canaan, verse 13, they went about from nation to nation, from one kingdom to another people. He allowed no one to do them wrong. Yes, he reproved kings for their sakes. Don't touch my anointed ones. Do my prophets no harm. Comment, for example, when King Abimelech in Canaan took Abraham's wife Sarah, God reproved him. He told him, You're a dead man if you don't give her back. She's his wife. Moreover, he's a prophet. Genesis 30, verses 3 to 7. Don't touch my anointed ones, do my prophets no harm. That extends to the Christian. If anyone touches us, God takes note of it because we inherit the promises of Abraham. One of the promises was that God would be his shield. Genesis 15:1. Now moving to the famine in Canaan during Jacob's time, verse 16. He called for a famine on the land. He destroyed the food supplies. He sent a man before them. Comment, God sent Joseph to Egypt ahead of the family so that he was ready to save them from the famine. Here's how it happened, still in verse 17. Joseph was sold for a slave. They bruised his feet with shackles. His neck was locked in irons until the time that his word happened, and Yahweh's word proved him true. Comment, Yahweh's word to Joseph proved true that his family would bow to him. The fulfillment of Joseph's dreams proved him true that the dreams he told were from God. Now concerning Joseph being locked in the dungeon in Egypt, verse 20, The king sent and freed him, even the ruler of the peoples, and let him go free. He made him lord of his house and ruler of all his possessions, to discipline his princes at his pleasure, and to teach his elders wisdom. Comment, in Egypt there is no one so wise as Joseph. He was the wisdom of the country, thanks to God gifting that wisdom to him. Genesis 41:39. He taught all the Egyptians what they must do, even the princes and elders, and had the power to issue commands to any of them except Pharaoh. Genesis 41:40. When the famine hit, verse 23. Israel also came into Egypt. Jacob lived in the land of Ham. Comment, the Egyptians descended from Noah's son Ham. Genesis 10:6. The land of Ham in verse 23 is Egypt. There were 70 Israelites in all when they moved to Egypt. Genesis 46:27. Speaking of what God did for Israel over the next 400 years, verse 24. He increased his people greatly and made them stronger than their adversaries. He turned their heart to hate his people, to conspire against his servants. Comment, God turned the heart of their Egyptian adversaries to hate them. They enslaved them. Eventually, verse 26, he sent Moses his servant and Aaron whom he had chosen. They performed miracles among them and wonders in the land of Ham. Comment, now speaking of how God wrought the 10 plagues, verse 28, he sent darkness and made it dark. They didn't rebel against his words. He turned their waters into blood and killed their fish. Their land swarmed with frogs, even in the rooms of their kings. He spoke, and swarms of flies came, and lice in all their borders. He gave them hail for rain, with lightning in their land. He struck their vines and also their fig trees, and shattered the trees of their country. He spoke, and the locusts came, and the grasshoppers without number ate up every plant in their land, and ate up the fruit of their ground. He struck also all the firstborn in the land, the first fruits of all their manhood. Comment, now speaking of how God brought the Israelites out of Egypt in style, verse 37. He brought them out with silver and gold. There was not one feeble person among his tribes. Egypt was glad when they departed, for the fear of them had fallen on them. Comment, coming up when Israel left Egypt, God sent a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night to go ahead of them. When Pharaoh regretted releasing them, he chased them with his army. He trapped them against the Red Sea, but God moved the cloud between the Israelites and Pharaoh's army as a barrier. The cloud was dark from the Egyptian standpoint, but bright from the Israelites' standpoint. At night the cloud kept the Egyptians in darkness and the Israelites in the light. Speaking of how the cloud protected them, verse 39. He spread a cloud for a covering, a fire to give light in the night. They asked, and he brought quails, and satisfied them with the bread of the sky. He opened the rock, and waters gushed out. They ran as a river in the dry places, for he remembered his holy word and Abraham his servant. Comment, this was all God being faithful to his 500-year-old promise to Abraham, Genesis 15:13-16, that Abraham's descendants would be afflicted in a foreign land 400 years, but God would bring them out with great wealth, and they would possess the promised land. Verse 43. He brought his people out with joy, his chosen with singing. He gave them the lands of the nations. They took the labor of the peoples in possession, that they might keep his statutes and observe his laws. Praise Yah. Comment, the Israelites conquered the promised land, but it was more like God conquered it for them. And along with the land, they took the labor of the inhabitants, meaning they took their cities, houses, olive groves, vineyards, and so forth, everything the inhabitants had built up. The Israelites didn't have to build it up. In verse 45, the only thing God required of them was to keep his statutes and observe his laws. That's the end of the psalm. As the spiritual children of Abraham, Galatians 3:7, this psalm is a reminder of what God has done for us. We're the children of Abraham, Matthew 22:32. We'll possess the land forever. Let's not forget how God made an impossible promise to Abraham and fulfilled it through many miracles, how he was faithful to him. Though he was long gone, Abraham was alive to God. This story should be meaningful to us because all the promises to Abraham apply to us, and God will work similar miracles for us if he has to make it happen. The end result stated over and over in the Scriptures as an absolute and unbreakable promise is that the descendants of Abraham will possess the land forever. That promise is still in effect. Psalm 106 is next.